The Transgration Academy for the Magical Arts. The Hall of Champions. Competitors Field. Local time 11:45. Oris.
The world stood still, and all eyes were on me. In front of me, a commoner, nay, a new roamer, daring to impose a display only reserved for equals of pedigree and station. Sheer shock kept me from moving a muscle, whilst outrage and revulsion filled my very being. I had, for a moment, forgotten the context of this gesture. So egregious was it that it acted as the personification of the entire day's offences, a symbol of defiance against what should be, a representation of rebellious contempt against what should have happened. The supposed intent of the gesture was not lost on me. However, what others may see as a hand extended in reconciliation was instead a poisoned dagger, one pointed directly at my soft underbelly, where both choice and indecision spelled the same conclusion: death. Surely others could see this too. Surely the Professor, the symbol of Nexian benevolence and an extension of His Majesty's will, would swiftly resolve this quagmire by simply removing the offending weapon, thus disarming this malicious assault. Surely she would. Surely she had to. But that didn't happen. Nor did help in any other fashion arrive. Instead, I was left on my lonesome, abandoned by a representative of righteousness, to succumb to the wounds inflicted upon me by the Avatar of Darkness itself. Its red eyes mocked me, even as we stood as near physical equals. Its hand, that deceitful gesture, sent both chills and pangs of disgust straight through to my very core. Why couldn't anyone else see its malicious intent? Could they not see this savage cornering a fellow civilized peer? Why could no one else see that this gesture was simply an extension of its deceitful ways? For just as its masterfully crafted suit was designed to hide savagery beneath it, so too was this gesture extended with the intent to hide this most heinous of assaults beneath a thin visage of civility, this mockery of chivalry. I was cornered, with a dagger held to my throat, amidst an audience of weak-willed onlookers. Would somebody just do something? Parum, 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 pum pum. That music, the much-anticipated sounds marking the prelude to the end of classes, filled the air with relief beyond all measure. The musical troupe arrived on scene to the knowing wink of my most reliable ally amidst this sea of weak-willed ingrates. The ever-dependable Lady Ladona had managed to even fool me in this instance, as her constructs marched ever forwards, forcing the class's premature end. I was saved. Scream! A massive disturbance in the manor fields marked the arrival of the house-sized wyvern, which landed with a deafening thud, skulking its way towards the constructs with malicious intent. The music suddenly screeched to a halt as a result, as the entire troop was crushed to the tune of 100 bone-shattering crunches. Only the conductor was spared, if only momentarily. His fate was to be a spectacle, as he was flung up into the air with a forepaw before landing within the beast's teeth with a silent slice, splitting in two before dissipating into mana. "She killed the band!" someone shouted from the crowds, prompting the professor to quickly intervene, but not before the Venerian could chime in first. "They weren't the real band, you idiot," he announced confidently. "It was a paltry parlor trick." "Aptly deducted, Lord Valaria," the professor spoke, taking a moment to scratch the wyvern's chin. "Let me be clear, class. Whilst I do consider myself to be a tolerant professor, I do not take kindly to these brazen oversteps of authority." She took a moment to glare intently at Ladona, her wyvern doing much the same. "So please, act like the adults I believe you to be, or don't, and be treated as the children whose behaviors you mime and mimic." Ladona took the best route she could at this point, hiding amongst the crowd and blending into the audience. The professor graciously didn't pursue further disciplinary actions on that route. What she did resume, however, was the very situation the Aurora Realmer had attempted to save me from, as the new Realmer stubbornly refused to retract that hand, all throughout this brief disruption. Time once more stood at a standstill, as I reached out a hand before stopping halfway. It was time to enact a plan, to propose an offer that the new Realmer could not refuse. I refuse to acknowledge that this competition is over. Far from it. I wish to defer the results of this competition, pending a second, final challenge, I began, eliciting 100 gasps from the crowd. I wish to call upon my points of gentlemanly deferral to raise the new Realmer the offer of a higher stakes wager which I will honor, provided the new Realmer bests me in this upcoming house-choosing ceremony. A smile once more crept across my face, as I could feel the new Realmer's mind racing with a primitive drive to reach for that golden grouse, for the coveted desire of earning more by teasing another fight. Do you accept, Emma Booker of Earthrealm? My gambit was set, and even Lady Ladona appeared to be looking on with a rejuvenated hope. All eyes shifted to the new Realmer's response, as a ray of hope finally entered the fray, in the form of this assured escalation. "No thank you, but I appreciate the offer," came the new Realmer's words, as she responded in that insultingly upbeat, almost dismissive cadence. I felt as if a phantom's hand had just smacked me right across the face. My limbs ran cold, and my cheeks burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns. Frustration, hatred, and a seething rage filled me, as I eyed that hand with the accumulated ire of an entire week's worth of pent-up fury threatening to boil over. And so, with my escape routes blocked off, I would have to fight my way out. My hand reached down, poised to slap the new Realmer's hand away. I felt the alien fabric of her digits, then, suddenly, ah! Pain. The Transgration Academy for the Magical Arts. The Hall of Champions. Competitors Field. Local time 11:50. Emma. You didn't need to be an expert or anything to anticipate a slap coming for your hand. A split second was all I had in order to make a call, not that I needed to think much about it. I was just so done with the ball, at least for today. So to avoid further public humiliation, and to put this entire day's shenanigans to rest, I took active measures to ensure everything would end right here, right now. The competition, the wager, the bull's arrogance, at least for today, ended with a firm grip of his hand. One that I held just long enough and coerced into a shake, in order to save both of us from further shame. I was doing him a favour. Or at least, I hope so. His pained expressions gave me an immediate pause. However, I quickly realised at the last second exactly why he'd reacted so viscerally. As a quick pan across my HUD revealed that the EV had kept my prior orders active. The orders from the arm wrestling challenge, that is. In short, it was set to match and slightly exceed any force or strength applied. The bull could have simply avoided this by refraining from his antics. Instead, he had to have gone for a slap, and a pretty hard one at that. The man just kept managing to reap what he sowed. A sigh escaped my breath as I pulled back that handshake, Chiska arriving on scene, as he managed to recover remarkably quickly from that debacle. "Well, I guess it's the gesture that counts," I managed out with a chuckle, one that would have been countered if it wasn't for Chiska once more addressing both us and the crowds. "Good sportsmanship goes a long way, and I am happy to see this resolved with a good, solid handshake. Isn't that what this was, Lord Ping?" Chiska managed those latter words under her breath, one that, when accompanied by the wyvern's hot breath, elicited a reluctant nod from the man. "Good.
Now that this impromptu wager has been resolved, I hereby officially grant you, Cadet Emma Booker, free rein to participate in all magical physical activities. Congratulations on your efforts, and suffice it to say, I will be maintaining a close eye on you for the duration of this year's PE classes. She beamed brightly, that excitement translating to her energetic jostling of my shoulder, one that I had to purposefully force the suit to follow the motions of. Now, the rest of you. She turned to the class. You all did a commendable job, and for those of you who decided to participate in all of the activities, I award you, each, 50 points. A series of gasps erupted from the entirety of class. Most were frustrated, whilst others were utterly ecstatic. Gummago, for one, looked on with crossed arms and a satisfied grin, with the rest of his crocodile troop jumping for joy. They'd all participated, which meant a solid 200 points had just been acquired for their peer group in the span of a single period. Quiv seemed quite satisfied as well, nodding with his signature smug look plastered across his maw. And for those of you who participated in more than one activity, I award you 5 points per activity. A few students began doing the math, which I more or less managed to do in my head right off the bat. The 50 points were surprisingly fair. With a total of 4 stations for the non-magical competition and 5 for the magical, 6 if you count the distances between each station, this more or less added up. But don't think I've forgotten about you two. The professor jostled the both of us again. For your tenacity and efforts, and in sticking to your word by accepting and following through with the challenge you incited, I award you, Lord Ping, 75 points, on top of your 50 points for completing all stations. Oris's eyes grew wide at that, but that was before Chiska pulled the rug from beneath his feet. However, for Lady Ladona's brazen act of disrespect, I deduct 50 points from your group, she stated plain and simply, causing Ladona in the bleachers to sink even deeper into the crowds. And finally, Cadet Emma Booker? Yes, Professor. I award you 90 additional points, on top of the 50 points for completing all stations. The Professor grinned brightly, swishing her tail now, as she was clearly eager to get to her next points. This isn't for you finishing first, mind you, nor is it for you winning the competition and reaping the rewards for your wager, she added with a raised finger. But instead, it's for a display I rarely see nowadays, and one that I want to see more of amongst the student body. She made sure to hammer that point home into the crowd, as she directed her voice more towards them than myself. This back and forth started to feel more like a public conversation by the second. Sportsmanship, chivalry, the spirit of honor for the sake of honor, not face. These are the sorts of things that are slowly withered from the halls of this grand gymnasium. Too long have I seen us shift from challenges made in good faith to ones of vapid gain and plays of shifting political interests. Too long have I seen sports and physical education shift away from its noble origins into a mere tool for ungentlemanly gains. The academy is a time for personal growth, to play in a safe and controlled environment that rarely exists outside of its walls. This isn't the time to perform cutthroat politics. You have your whole lives to commit to that, after all. That latter statement was made with a certain level of genuine sadness, one that almost brought her spirits down. Almost being the operative word here. Henceforth, I wish to see more of this genuine spirit of chivalry and sportsmanship. The professor made the effort of gesturing towards me this time around, making the impetus behind this speech clear, if it wasn't clear enough. This is not to say I will be overstepping my bounds to limit your points of personal privilege. However, know that I will reward what I see as chivalrous, honourable, and good faith actions, and understand that I will punish acts of bad faith, breach of authority, and anything I deem as a gross misconduct of the established rules, she clarified, before noting the arrival of the real band this time around, as their signature music started to echo across the field. I wish to see a return to the glory days, a return to better times, and I hope that, against all odds, This year group will be the year to turn that hope into a reality. Now, with all of that being said, class is dismissed. Oh, and if this wasn't clear already, with physical education usually taking up one period, this is the final period of this week. Have fun. But not too much fun, for you have a shopping trip and a house-choosing ceremony to attend this weekend. The crowd's reactions was mixed this time around, as the professor's rapid-paced speeches had more or less shoved 2 Vanavan classes' worth of emotions into a single announcement. Most seemed satisfied to have been awarded their points and their ego stroked, albeit in a roundabout way. A good chunk seemed to glare at me before lumping themselves in with Oris as soon as he left the professor's grip, with less than desirable words and accusations being tossed my way as soon as they left earshot.
Know that whatever happens, we will follow you to the ends of the Nexus itself, Lord Ping.
You were duped out of a victory, and into this appalling state of affairs. In fact, this professor is either delusional or has fallen for the New Realmer's spell. We will not fall into the same traps, Lord Ping.
Strong are the ones who maintain their faith and integrity, and only the strong shall survive the year. You have our support, Lord Ping.
As much as I wish to make a standing ovation, does anyone else find it odd how the New Realmer was able to push beyond her earlier limits?
A trick and nothing more.
Yet as much as the loud crowd seemed to take center stage, so too were more groups forming. This time around Quiv's orbit, as he weaved his way back towards the sands.
Truly a disappointing display by our fellow, wouldn't you say, Lord Quiv?
Bested and humiliated by a New Realmer, through an offer of chivalrous de-escalation, no less.
Whether or not that was a political play or a move made of noble intent, Ping managed to somehow find the worst way out of that predicament. A simple handshake would have been preferable to the fate he'd inflicted upon himself. As much as I find the New Realmer Savage to be simple-minded, it's clear she's found her place, and has made moves to become a professor's favourite. I would say it's remarkable, if it wasn't for the fact that the class she chose to tie her affinities to was physical education, of all things. It's clear to me she's simply playing to her strengths. However, in spite of the 2 large crowds, a small minority had gathered around the Gamma-Go Itholin orbit, clearly roused by the professor's speech, and to an extent the mystery surrounding the armor's capabilities.
Well, chaps, 200 points.
Gamma-Go began with a cocky rub of his blunted claws against his leather sash.
But points and our successes aside, is there anybody else who wishes to address?
He paused, his eyes glancing towards me, still in the field.
The loud clunker in the stadium?
Yes. The noise and the speed. I've noticed it too. There must be something to it. It couldn't have been mere trickery. There was a clunky, unnatural, almost otherworldly noise emanating from the armor during that run.
Indeed. Some form of, dare I say it, unnatural phenomenon? It couldn't have been just her physicality to have been the source of that. No. Otherwise, why the noise?
A distraction, maybe?
For what purpose? To hide her physicality? That's silly. Why create a distracting noise when there is nothing to gain from it being hidden? There must be something more. Something we aren't seeing.
Something beneath the armor?
Or perhaps even the armor itself.
I can say, for most of us, we didn't notice the clunks.
Well, you weren't on the field where it was most obvious.
This is not the place for such talks. Quiv finally entered the fray, arriving at the stands and scattering the group, as another distinct chunk of the year group now took over from where those stray conversations had taken place.
Attention all students,
Eleanor began, having forcibly dragged Itholin back up to the highest benches of the stands, forcing the poor thing to once more hold his oversized hat turned sack.
With the competition coming to a close, I hereby wish to distribute the spoils of this gentlemanly wager, he announced triumphantly,
with a big fat grin on his face that did nothing but to incur the ire of the crowd.
To Prince Thalmin of Havenbrock, 20 sovereigns.
He dug around the sack, handing the prince this paltry sum.
And to the host, to yours truly, with which the remainder of the wages have been counterbalanced upon.
Eleanor paused for dramatic effect, doing nothing but to elicit even more groans of annoyance at his actions.
I take away 10,194 sovereigns.
The deluxe kobold was practically cackling with joy at that point, looking as if he was standing on top of the world. Even more ecstatic at the entire affair than I was at winning the damn thing. However, as quickly as that excitement began, so too was it tempered. This time by an unexpected party.
Ahem,
Etholian vocalized, clearing his throat.
As the purse master, it would be unbecoming of me if I did not ask for my own shares of the winnings, Lord Valaria.
I beg your pardon, Lord Acela?
I politely request my purse master's fees, in both the traditional cut and as a lump sum surcharge serving as compensation for the suddenness of the entire affair.
The man clarified in no uncertain terms, and for the first time looking as if he was actually in his element. No amount of indignant rage from the Venerian could keep the ferret down, and he acquiesced surprisingly quickly.
2%, and a lump sum of 200,
Eleanor stated firmly, digging around the sack as he did so, whilst a parchment and quill suddenly appeared out of nowhere, writing down what seemed to be a whole contract in a matter of seconds.
10%, and a sum of 1,000,
Etholian shot back, his eyes narrowing with a knowing expression.
3 and 250,
Eleanor countered with an indignant hiss, the floating pen crossing a few lines, only to replace them with the new proposals.
9 and 950,
Etholian rebutted confidently.
3.5 and 350, 7 and 800. Enough!
The Venerian shouted, flames spewing from his open maw.
4.5% and 500,
he announced with finality, prompting Etholian to nod affirmatively in response.
Deal!
Deal! The whole affair was concluded with a shake of hands, and a signing of the contract which resulted in the immediate transfer of the coins over to Etholian, in the form of a trail of gold flowing directly to the little pouch on his belt. The rest of the gold was quickly dumped out of Etholian's hat and into Eleanor's own pouch, one that grew to size in order to fit the sheer volume of gold, only to shrink back into a small pouch that clipped onto his belt. The whole affair was surprisingly civil, especially when compared to the Oris Ping drama that had preceded it. Immediately following that, however, I felt a tap on my shoulder, as Chiska gestured for me to follow with an expectant smile. "Walk with me, Cadet Booker," she urged. I complied with a shrug, as a privacy screen soon blanketed the both of us. There are a few things that surprise me in my old age, Cadet Booker. Fewer that brings me both a sense of excitement and hope. Part of this, of course, comes from your refreshing adherence to the noble expectations of a gentler time. Though I would be lying if I didn't mention the dragon in the cell, or in this case, your uncanny abilities to defy standard conventions of strength and endurance. The professor began with that same overture of positivity she exuded from her end-of-period announcement. With that being said, I understand that there are certain limits placed upon how much you can elaborate on these uncanny abilities. So, in the spirit of the rules, but in placating that ever-present gnawing of curiosity, I must ask, exactly what happened between the Manalus and magical trials? I paused for a moment, as we now reached the foot of the bleachers, with most students currently in the process of leaving the stands. I applied that which I am not allowed to talk about, Professor, I responded with a knowing wink. I pushed beyond my natural limits using techniques never before seen or heard of in the Nexus and beyond, I continued vaguely, only eliciting a greater degree of scrutinizing stares from the professor. I see, the professor nodded, placing her chin between her fingers as she entered a state of deep thought. And is that all? As far as the Dean will allow me to say, Professor. A frustrated sigh escaped from Chiska's short muzzle. I see. Well, it's not like there's going to be a shortage of time with you, Cadet Booker. We'll have to see where this rabbit hole takes us then. Until such time, I bid you farewell. The professor closed things off with a smile, as she quickly hopped back on the wyvern that had been following us all this time. Oh, and do contact me if you ever want to sign up for extracurriculars. My office will always be open to you, Cadet Booker, she shouted, dropping the privacy screen and leaving the same way she entered, through the skylight. This time around, she simply phased through the glass, saving us from the hassle of being impaled by 100 shards of shattered glass.
Well, well, well,
a familiar voice emerged, one that was accompanied by a loud clink with every other step.
For someone who seems so confused by the theatre of life, you seem to play the role of the knight in shining white armour quite well, Earthrealmer,
Eleanor began, with a voice of unfettered joy. It was just a handshake, Eleanor. It was literally just a handshake. Why do you guys have to make such a huge deal out of every little thing? Especially ones meant to de-escalate things. I shot up with a frustrated breath. And no, before you answer, I know. It's a statement of superiority, an affront to the established class order, etc., etc. I groaned.
Intentionally or not, you have made great strides in improving our standing. So thank you, Earthrealmer.
The blue thing once more shocked me with this growing sense of appreciation, sending me into wordlessness as I stood there, shook by his compliments.
Do not be enamoured by his honeyed words, Emma, Thamin retorted, moving towards us now after sending the ever-enamoured Cynthius away. Note how he only reacts positively when he has something to gain, which today was threefold: the points you earned, the reputation you accrued, and the coin you secured for him through your victory.
The coins which I earned, mind you, Prince Heavenbrock. If it wasn't for my quick thinking, then there would be no coin to speak of.
And if it wasn't for Emma, then you'd have nothing to bet off of, the prince growled.
Therefore, the coin should be awarded to those most deserving of it, Thacia finally interjected. Given the nature of the upcoming trip into Elasir for school supplies, and given the cruel nature of being the candidate of a new realm, these funds should prove useful, the Avenor began, as she elicited a sigh from the Venerian.
I was going to suggest that, Princess, he announced dejectedly.
I have my doubts about that, Thamin butted in, but was promptly ignored by the Venerian.
I will hand over only what is necessary for this town trip, Eleanor clarified. Only a quarter should cover the costs of her supplies. If she even needs any, that is.
We may be looking into using about half, if not more than those funds, Eleanor, Thacia countered, eliciting a look of shock from the Venerian, as she gestured for us to continue off and out of the stands. This may be better discussed somewhere more private. With a collective nod between all of us, we began making our way back towards the dorms. Though a mostly wordless trip, one conversation did crop up, as I quickly addressed Thacia with an appreciative nod. Thanks again for the scarf, Thacia. I'm assuming you'll probably want it back, though, I spoke, reaching over to remove the red scarf only to be stopped by the Avenor. It's quite all right, Emma, she responded politely, and with a candid smile. I'd rather you keep it as a keepsake of today's adventures. Moreover, I'm more than certain it should prove useful next class, so there's no need to return it. Thanks, Thacia, I nodded with a smile, keeping the scarf on for now with a smile of my own.
The Transgression Academy for the Magical Arts. Dragon's Heart Tower, Level 23, Residence 30. Local time, 12:20 hours. Emma.
The PMC route, huh? I muttered out, more to myself than anyone else. You know, that's what I've been considering too, but I never thought that it would be this straightforward, I offered, prompting Thacia to nod once in response. Adventurers exist for a reason, Emma. For situations that may require a third party, or in circumstances where an unaffiliated party may be required, or even in instances such as these, where your own assets may be limited, they offer an easy solution to enhance one's reach.
Provided you have enough coin, that is,
Eleanor chimed in with an annoyed groan.
Searching for an amethyst dragon is most certainly going to be expensive, Thamin admitted.
Expensive is a relative term, Prince Thamin, Eleanor shot back before sighing inwardly, though in this case, within the context of our recent winnings, it may indeed be quite costly.
My estimates put the potential cost of a search for the amethyst dragon to be at approximately 2,500 sovereigns, not including provisions, guild fees, taxes, or under-table taxes, Thacia quickly added.
And that's not even including the specialist fees that may be tacked on to such a quest. Moreover, the nature of the quest must be specified, as you may find there to be a stark difference between simply tracking down the dragon versus slaying it outright. Eleanor perked up. Because those are two fundamentally different tasks, Princess.
The former may incur as much costs as the latter, Eleanor. Thalmin offered with a raised hand. From my experiences in hiring adventurers, there seems to be an equivalent feat in stealth as there is in combat. For finding the dragon is one thing, but maintaining stealth while approaching and evading it is another.
Which may cost as much as actually engaging it, if not a bit less, I suppose.
Eleanor shrugged. The real reason why combat missions incur a higher toll is the potential for compensation for a dead adventurer, or a hefty fee in reviving them. Thalmin chimed in, eliciting a nod from both Thasia and Eleanor.
Hazard fee, injury fee, full medical coverage. Gotcha, I surmised. Alright, so whether we decide to find it or kill it, I gotta ask, how much are we looking at this then? Like, total?
5,000 gold, give or take, with all the fees included, not including the potential compensation for lost lives or revivals.
Eleanor chimed in, prompting Thasia to nod affirmatively. A conservative estimate of the fees, but close enough, Thalmin added.
Alright, well, that seems good enough, I suppose. I let out a hefty sigh. In any case, maybe we could continue discussing this at a later time. I think we have a library to visit, Eleanor, I stated bluntly, prompting the Venerian to shiver in place. But before that, we need to pay a visit to the armourer to retrieve a certain little book. The sign did say he would be open today, after all.
Oh, here we go again. Dear Majesty protect me,
Eleanor muttered out under his breath.